Hello everyone, Susan Storm here, and today I want to talk about 7 signs that you are dealing with an unhealthy INTJ personality type. Eventually I'd like to get into all 16 types, but we're going to start with my own type because I thought I'd be the first to throw myself under the bus. But if you're an INTJ watching this, just know that if you aren't relating to specific examples that I'm mentioning, it may be that you are in a healthier phase of development, and that's a good thing. We all can show up in healthy or unhealthy ways, sometimes for long periods and other times for very short periods. Maybe we're having a lot of stress, maybe we're sick, or maybe we're chronically underdeveloping certain parts of our personality type. So let's go ahead and dive right into 7 signs that you are dealing with an unhealthy INTJ personality type. One of the first signs that an INTJ is unhealthy is that they are extremely stubborn. Now, stubbornness isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to be stubborn in the face of, injustice or persecution or something really important. But where INTJs can, when it's unhealthy, it's like they're shutting out any input from the outside. They're so focused on their idea, their vision, their plan, that they are unwilling. It's like they're almost cutting out even logical inconsistencies within it or any kind of arguments against what they're doing. And the reason that this is happening is that they are shutting out information from the extroverted part of their personality type. So they're shutting out information from extroverted thinking, and they're perhaps shutting out information from extroverted sensing, their inferior function. They're so focused on their introverted intuitive agenda, what they see as being the best course of action for the future, that they're shutting out information for anything that could detract from that. So a healthy INTJ is going to have a good symbiotic relationship with all of their cognitive functions. They're going to have a strong relationship with their introverted intuition, but it's going to be balanced on the other end by a good relationship with extroverted sensing, their inferior function. Because introverted intuition and extroverted sensing are essentially the spine of the INTJ's personality type. You can't have a fully fleshed out, healthy, introverted intuitive hero without having a respectful relationship for extroverted sensing. And so some immature INTJs will run into an issue where they are all about introverted intuition, but they don't care about extroverted sensing, and so they're not looking at as many concrete facts and details as they need to when they move forward into their vision for whatever big idea or vision they have for the future. They may also be imbalanced when it comes to extroverted thinking. Extroverted thinking is the co-pilot of the INTJ's personality type, or the mother-father, if you're getting into BB's 8-function model. And so this function really helps to support and nurture the INTJ. With introverted intuition, it's this very abstract function. It's very focused on theories and concepts and symbols and metaphors and meanings and ripple effects. Extroverted thinking is more focused on objective logic, what can be empirically proven, what's logically consistent, and a healthy INTJ will back up all their intuitive visions with this input from extroverted thinking, and that's what makes them very logical, very objective, very strategic and powerful. But when INTJs are getting out information from the extroverted world and they're staying primarily in their introverted functions, then they even can be dismissive of extroverted thinking information if it goes against their vision or their idea. Second, unhealthy INTJs can be very impractical. So earlier I talked about how introverted intuition, in order to be really healthy, needs input from extroverted sensing, the inferior function. What happens when INTJs are basically dismissing and devaluing extroverted sensation all the time is that they become very impractical. Introverted intuition is very abstract. That's the whole point, is that they're trying to reach beyond what's real into hidden meanings and patterns and connection. And that's super important, but you also need that connection to extroverted sensing, which is focused on what's real, what's tangible, what you can see and trust via your senses, things that are proven facts. So when INTJs are constantly dismissing extroverted sensation, then they can become very impractical and very ungrounded and out of touch with their tether to reality. And that's really, really important. And later on in this video, I'll give you some ideas for getting back into touch with extroverted sensing. Third, unhealthy INTJs can be really condescending. I know it's a stereotype that INTJs are condescending, but the truth is healthy INTJs really aren't very condescending because they realize that everyone has a different perspective and they're very good at shifting into those different perspectives to kind of understand where different people are coming from. But unhealthy INTJs are unfortunately very condescending. They can easily critique other people's opinions without even fully hearing them out. And they often think that their intuitive agenda or plan or vision is kind of better than the rest of the world. These other people who are constantly focusing on mundane, nitty-gritty, detail stuff. Sometimes INTJs feel like misfits in the world, and often they are misfits in the world. They often feel a little out of touch with the everyday person, just because there are very few INTJs really out there. And one of the ways that their ego can defend themselves is by thinking that they are more evolved than everyone else. And that can turn into this condescension that then leaks out into their relationships with people. There are better ways to deal with feeling like a misfit, better ways to deal with feeling misunderstood. But this is one of the ways that I think it's easier to rely on. It's like, well, nobody gets me because they're not as smart as I am, or nobody gets me because they're not as insightful as I am. So condescension is another sign that perhaps this INTJ is in an unhealthy place in their life. Another sign, I think we're on sign number 4, that an INTJ is unhealthy is that they are staying isolated. So we talked earlier about how INTJs can become out of touch with the extroverted part of their personality type. And when INTJs are doing that, they become very reclusive. They don't really want experience with the external world. They don't really want to put themselves out there with the external world. They tend to dismiss people, societal expectations, and feel that anything external is very oppressive. And so they keep to themselves. Now, as introverts, it's super important for INTJs to get alone time. It's very important for them to have time to recharge, reflect, and get into their intuition. So alone time is very important. We're not talking about an INTJ who needs a few hours of alone time a day. We're talking about an INTJ who is consistently avoiding any input from the external world. They aren't going to visit friends, family. They're not arguing their ideas with people. They're not testing their theories in the real world. They're just staying very isolated. And that's usually a sign that an INTJ is in what we call an NIFI loop, where they're looping back and forth between their introverted functions and they're kind of dismissing those extroverted functions that are so important. Another sign number 5, that you're dealing with an unhealthy INTJ is that they are extremely critical. Now, it's normal for people with extroverted thinking in their function stack to stay a little skeptical when people give them information in order to check for logical consistencies or inconsistencies, in order to check to see if there's any flaws in the other person's reasoning, or maybe the information they're being given isn't thoroughly researched. So it's normal for a TJ type to stay a little skeptical at first when people give them information. But an unhealthy INTJ is going to be so skeptical, they're just going to critique everything right away without even giving the other person a chance to finish what they're saying, without even trying to switch into the person's perspective in order to see where they're coming from. It's like they miss the main point by critiquing all these, what they see as low-hanging fruit in the other person's argument, like, logical inconsistencies and things like that. And so they can be difficult to be around because they're just very almost pedantic. And this is something that we associate a lot with introverted thinking types, but unhealthy extroverted thinking types can be very pedantic in sometimes a very similar way. They're just throwing out other people's arguments, other people's ideas very quickly in order to stay aligned with their own vision. All right. Sign number 6 that an INTJ is unhealthy is that they resist taking action. Unhealthy INTJs are so perfectionistic and they are so focused on having the perfect plan and having their course perfectly lined up that they resist actually taking action. They get stuck in formulating the perfect plot or whatever project they're working on. It has the course for it, the idea for it has to be perfect. And so they don't actually get very much done because they're constantly theorizing and trying to refine their vision. And again, this can come down to them being in what we call, again, the the NI-FI loop, where they're circling back and forth between introverted intuition and introverted feeling. And so they are constantly working on refining that idea, that intuitive vision, that intuitive plan or agenda, and they're not putting it out and testing it in the external world, which is something that extroverted thinking, their auxiliary function, and extroverted sensing, their inferior function, are really good at. All right, the last sign, I'm sure there's more than this, but the last sign for today of an unhealthy INTJ is, this is the INTJ. We've talked a lot about INTJs who are out of touch with their extroverted side. This time we're talking about INTJs who are out of touch with their introverted side. So an INTJ who is not making time for their introverted functions, perhaps they're pushed in to a lot of obligations, they're very busy, they have a lot of responsibilities, they're not getting enough alone time. This INTJ can look exhausted, for one, because they're an introvert and they're not giving themselves time to get the introverted energy that they need through reflection and alone time. But also, they tend to shut down their emotions, because it's very painful for them to be in this place where they're in their extroverted functions all the time. They tend to become almost robotic, because they realize that if they are able to get into their emotions, it could pull them away from the productivity they need to be engaged in order to accomplish what they need to do in the external world. So they tend to shut down their emotions. They can be very impatient and restless. They feel like they have so much to do. They've got to achieve their goals as quickly as possible. And they have basically the reverse problem of the INTJ I was talking about in the previous point. So INTJs who are too wrapped up in their introverted world can be very dismissive of, they can be take forever to get anything done because everything has to be perfect. But the INTJ who is too wrapped up in their extroverted functions, so extroverted thinking and extroverted sensing, can be very impatient and very impulsive and restless and needs to get things done super, super, super fast, because they're out of touch with their introverted intuition and they're out of touch with their introverted feeling. And that's when they get robotic, and that's when they get really become workhorses. Like, I have to get this done, I have to do these things. And you might run into this with INTJs who, you know, they have high positions in business, or maybe they're parents with lots of kids. I know I've run into this issue because, you know, I have 5 kids and run a business, and so INTJs who have a lot of external obligations can run into this issue where they, in order to cope, in order to reach their goals, they shut down their emotions. They get really restless and impatient and just task focused. 7 signs that you're dealing with an unhealthy INTJ. What do we do about being unhealthy? Because now I've told you some ways to see it, but if you're an INTJ watching this, you might be wondering, what am I supposed to do about it? I don't want to just stay here being unhealthy. I want to fix this. So first of all, you have to understand the importance of respecting all of your cognitive functions. So as an INTJ, you have access to intuition, thinking, feeling, and sensing. You are not just an introvert, intuitive thinker, judger. You have a feeling side, you have a thinking side, an intuitive side, and a sensing side. So if you recognize these signs that you are unhealthy, think about which functions you're maybe losing touch with. Are you an intuitive and you're really, obviously you're an intuitive, but are you really making time for insight, reflection? Are you making time to journal, to meditate, to get into your introverted intuition? Are you making time to shut out the world, get off your phone, quiet down the external surroundings so that you can actually have your intuitive insights? If not, that may be the path that you need to take. Are you so focused on that? Are you isolating yourself from the external world? Are you struggling with too much perfectionism? Well, that might be a sign that you need to get more into the extroverted side of your personality. So extroverted thinking or extroverted sensing. Maybe it's time to take a walk in nature, or maybe it's time to test one of your ideas in the real world. Have you been spending forever thinking about the perfect idea for a blog, for example? Well, maybe you should just make one and make your first post before everything is perfectly aligned. That's just an example. If you are out of touch with your feeling side, maybe you're pushing down your emotions and you're really becoming robotic and task focused. One of the ways you can work with this is by taking time to journal, write down your feelings, listen to music that actually gets you into your feelings, make time to get alone and process, maybe watch a movie that has a story that would be emotionally resonant to you. There are a lot of ways you can get into your introverted feeling, but I've often found that journaling, music, stories, reading, all these kinds of things are a really great way of doing that. And then, getting into your extroverted sensing side, that could be as simple as going out in your backyard and watching the stars one night, or doing some gardening and paying attention to the soil and learning gardening tips about how to make something grow. It's all about getting in touch with the real, tangible world around you in some way. And also taking some of your great ideas and testing them in the real world and kind of seeing what happens, using trial and error to kind of play with your ideas in an external way. I hope this has been helpful. If you want to find out more about unhealthy INTJ or INTJs at all, check the description because I'll put some helpful links down there for you. And I'll be back next time. We're going to be talking about unhealthy INFJs. So tune in for that, and I hope you'll have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.